Academic writing. The theme participle, reduced adjective clauses, participial phrases. Lecture 13. The Department of Foreign Language, 2 foreign languages. Lecturer Nurmanova. The objectives are to define participles and participial phrases, to identify reduced adjective clauses, to identify position and punctuation of participial phrases, to distinguish general form ing participial phrases and general form ed by participial phrases, and to study perfect form participial phrases. The plan. The first question, participles and participial phrases. The second, reduced adjective clauses. 3. Position and punctuation of participial phrases. 4. General form ing and ed participial phrases. And the fifth, perfect form participial phrases. So, a participial phrase is an adjective phrase headed by a participle. So there are the following examples of participial phrases. Peering over the top of his glasses, her tutor shook his head. The participial phrase describes her tutor. Cracked from top to bottom, the mirror was now ruined. The participial phrase here is the mirror. A participial phrase can start with a participle or a present participle. So here a quick version about participles. Remember that a participle is a verb form that can be used as an adjective. There are 2 types of participles. Present participle ending ing. Here an example of one and as an adjective. The rising tide. So past participle usually ending ed, d, t, en or n. So the example is the risen cake. Understanding adjective clauses. An adjective clause, also called a relative clause. It's a group of words that modify and describe a noun. Remember that an adjective clause contains a subject and a verb begin with the relative pronoun. Who, whom, whose, that, which are dependent clauses, which mean that they cannot stand alone because they have no meaning about an independent main clause. Reduced adjective clauses will reduce sentence when we have the same subject in the main clause and the adjective clause. Adjective clauses contain relative pronouns like who, which, or what. The reduced adjective clause becomes an adjective phrase which doesn't have a subject. An adjective phrase does not have a subject and a verb. Instead, it has a present participle, base verb plus ing for an active voice or a past participle for the passive voice. Reduced adjective clauses refer to the shortening of a relative clause, which modifies the subject of a sentence. Reduced relative clauses modify the subject and the object of the sentence. Reduced relative clauses are shortened version of relative clauses. They are also known as reduced adjective clauses. They modify a noun or a noun phrase. In the sentence, as in this example, the word table is being modified. The table that we bought was for his kitchen. In the reduced clause, that is no longer used. The table he bought was for his kitchen. However, it is not always just a matter of omitting the relative pronoun. There are different reduced relative clause rules depending on the sentence involved. So there are several types of reduced relative clauses. Present participle phrases, past participle phrases, past participles, prepositional phrases, adjectives, and adjective phrases. Types of reduced relative clauses. Relative clauses can also be reduced to shorter forms if the relative clause modifies the subject of a sentence. An adjective person who was happy, here happy person. An adjective phrase, man who was responsible for, man responsible for. A prepositional phrase, boxes that are under the counter, boxes under the counter. A past participle, student that was elected president, student elected president. A present participle, people who are working on the report, people working on the report. Reduce to an adjective. Remove the relative pronoun. Remove the verb, usually be, but also seem, appear, etc. Place the adjective used in the relative clause before the modified noun. Examples. The children who were happy played until 9 in the evening. Reduced. The happy children played until 9 in the evening. The house which was beautiful was sold for $3,000. Reduced. The beautiful house was sold for $3,000. Reduce an adjective phrase. Remove the relative pronoun. Remove the verb, usually be, but also seem, appear, etc. Place the adjective after the modified noun. Example. The product, which seemed perfect in many ways, failed to succeed in the market. Reduced. The product, perfect in many ways, failed to succeed in the market. Reducing the prepositional phrase. Remove the relative pronoun. Secondly, remove the verb be and place the prepositional phrase after the modified noun. Examples. The box which was on the table was made by it in Italy. Reduced. The box on the table was made in Italy. Reduced to a past participle. Remove the relative pronoun. Remove the verb to be. Place the verb participle before the modified noun. Examples. The desk which was stained was antique. Reduced. The stained desk was antique. Reduced to a past participle phrase. So, firstly, remove the relative pronoun. Remove the verb be. Place the past participle phrase after the modified noun. For example, the car which was purchased in Seattle was a vintage Mustang. Reduced. The car purchased in Seattle was a vintage Mustang. Reduced to a present participle. Firstly, remove the relative pronoun. Secondly, remove the verb be. And third, place the present participle phrase after the modified noun. Example. The professor who is teaching mathematics will leave the university. Reduced. The professor teaching mathematics will leave the university. Some action verbs reduce the present participle ing, especially when the present tense is used. First, remove the relative pronoun. Secondly, change the verb to the present participle form. And place the present participle phrase after the modified noun. For example, the man who lives near my home walks to work every day. Reduced. The man living near my home walks to work every day. Prepositional phrases. If the relative pronoun is followed by a prepositional phrase, then this can be reduced. The book that is on the table is mine. The book on the table is mine. The man who is in the jacket is my cousin. The man in the jacket is my cousin. Adjective and adjective phrases. Adjectives. So if the relative clause has only one adjective and the verb to be within it, then the adjective can be placed before the noun, and the relative pronoun and verb to be can be deleted. The boy who is oldest won the race. The oldest boy won the race. Adjective phrase. If there is a verb other than the verb to be, usually sense verbs such as smell, look, feel, sound, then we reduce it to an adjective phrase. Adjective plus verb plus ing. I played the song that sounded the best. I played the best sounding song. One more example. He always wears clothes that look expensive. He always wears expensive looking clothes. So when do we reduce relative clauses? Reduce relative clauses can be used to make your writing more concise, so it is common to use them with informal or academic writing, though they can appear in any style of writing. As the grammatical correct reduction of relative clauses is quite a difficult skill, it is sometimes an examiner at the IELTS test will look out for when awarding a band 7 and above for grammatical range and accuracy. We can use participle clauses after a noun in the same way as relative clauses. This gives more information about the noun. We sometimes call this a reduced relative clause. A present participle verb plus ing can be used in the same way as an active relative clause. The man driving the car is a friend of mine. Man who is driving the car is a friend of mine. The present participle can replace any active tense, not just the present continuous. Lorries coming over the bridge have to be careful in the wind. Lorries that come over the bridge have to be careful of the wind. So we generally don't use perfect participles. Having past plus past participle in the case, we can't use this kind of participle clause if we are talking about our finished action when it is not replaced. Instead, we use a normal relative clause. So, placement and punctuation. Participle phrases can appear in one of three places within a sentence, but we're careful not to risk awkwardness or confusion by placing it too far from the word it modifies. For example, a participle phrase that indicates a cause usually precedes the main clause and sometimes follows the subject, but only rarely appears at the end of the sentence. No matter where they are, they always modify a subject. Correctly punctuating a sentence that contains such a clause depends on where it is placed in reference to the subject. Before the main clause, the participle phrase is followed by a comma. Speeding down the highway, Bob didn't notice the police car. After the main clause, it is preceded by a comma. The gamblers silently arranged their cards, losing themselves in thought. In mid-sentence position, it is set off by commas before and after. In the real estate agent, thinking of your profit potential, decided not to buy the property. In each sentence below, the participle phrase clearly modifies the subject, my sister, and suggests a clause. Discouraged by the long hours and low pay, my sister finally quit her job. My sister, discouraged by the long hours and low pay, finally quit her job. But consider what happens when the participle phrase moves to the end of the sentence. My sister finally quit her job, discouraged by the long hours and low pay. Here the logical order of cause-effect is reversed, and as a result, the sentence may be less effective than the first two versions. While the sentence absolutely works grammatically, some may misread that the job is feeling discouraged instead of the sister. So, present participle phrase. If the relative pronoun is the subject of the relative clause, then the clause can be reduced by a present participle phrase. Verb ing phrase, past participle, verb ed phrase. If the verb is in the active voice, it gets reduced to a present participle phrase. Any active tense can be changed to a present participle phrase. For example, present simple, past simple, present continuous, present perfect, etc. To do this, you delete the relative pronoun and any auxiliary verbs if there are any, and use the present participle of the main verb. If it is a negative sentence, then we use not at the beginning of the participle phrase. Note that these reduced relative clauses examples are a mix of active tenses. The people that exercised every day lost the most weight. The people exercising every day lost the most weight. There were many employees who were working very hard. There were many employees working very hard. Negatives. The people that did not exercise every day lost the least weight. The people not exercising every day lost the most weight. It is not worth noting at this point that if a noun defining participle phrase refers to the subject of the independent clause, the phrase may be placed either immediately before or after the subject of that independent clause. So, past participle phrases. Simple phrase tense. If the relative clause is in the passive voice and in a simple tense, then it can be reduced by deleting the relative pronoun and the verb to be, leaving you with the past participle. If it is a negative, Then you place it not at the beginning of the participle phrase. The new illness, which was discovered by a doctor in Nigeria, was not yet being named. The new illness discovered by a doctor in Nigeria has not been named. Continuous tenses. If it is in the passive voice, but a continuous tense verb, present or past, then you delete the connecting not with and to be, leaving you with being plus past participle. You then have a continuous passive participle phrase. The building, which is being built by Kingston developers, should be completed by May. The buildings being built by Kingston developers should be completed by May. Perfect tenses. If the perfect clause in the passive perfect tense, present or past, then have or had is replaced by having. So we end up with having plus been to make the reduced relative clause. So this is a perfect passive participle phrase. The new town hall, which has been designed by TMC Architects Ltd, is expected to receive several awards. The new town hall, having been designed by TMC Architects Ltd, is expected to receive several awards. Choosing a present or past participle phrase. In the case of the perfect tenses, you can choose either present or past participle, depending on what you wish to emphasize in the sentence. When to choose the past participle? If you wish to emphasize the prior completion of the activity in the participle phrase, have is changed to having, leaving you with having plus past participle. And if you do not wish to emphasize in the participle phrase the prior completion of the activity, then it is more common to use the present participle. So, review. A participle phrase is an adjective phrase headed by a participle. Participle phrases function as adjectives. Reduced adjective clauses are mainly created through the use of present participle phrases, past participle phrase. An adjective is a group of words that modify or describe a noun, and corrective punctuating sentence that contains such a clause depends on where it is placed in the reference to the subject. Be able to answer the following questions and use the following literature while getting further practical tasks.